a demo of this without too much latency, and my stream capture just really does not like this for some reason. But alright, so just going to go over what the coefficients to the material instance do here. You got a nice animation playing here. If we can see it, which it seems to capture correctly when I move my mouse around, and then stop capturing when I stop my mouse. And I don't know why the hell it does that. But whatever. We can demo it this way, so that's fine. So let's just go ahead and turn the animation off. And we'll just start at the top. Okay. World scale. This is the master scale factor for the whole thing. If I make it a smaller number, it gets bigger. That was too big. We're in a hole, which we may be able to get around with this. Yeah, so you can see I made it basically 10 times larger everything when I did that. Go back up to 1, and it looks like this. 0.5, or halfway and half and half. We'll go back to the default setting, 1 here. And the default offset. Excuse me. So that's what world scale does. It scales everything. Noise scale will be helpful if we turn off distortion. This scales the underlying color noise that's getting distorted. If I go up, I get more variance. If I go way up, I get a lot of variance. If I go 1, we get some clouds like that. 0.01 be 10 times bigger, which is what we were at. Let's try happy middle. Okay, so this is what it looks like with no distortion applied to it. And then we want to enable our distortion, which is currently at 0. So we do 1, and this is the same thing. 1 is a higher amplitude. 0, 1. We got some pretty nice looking distortion there. This last value is the strength of the distortion. So this is controlling the size of the distortion pattern. And actually I need to click here so that you can see the change. Oops. But this is controlling the size of the distortion pattern. This is controlling the strength. So if I go down to 0.1, you have a little bit of distortion, but we're almost back to that puffy cloud look we were before. If I go to 0, we have no distortion. And if I go to 1, we have complete full distortion. So that's how you use these. Let's set it back to its default of 0.5. Offsets, I just demoed a second ago. These offset the X, Y, and Z UV coordinates of the effect, so that you could randomize these if you wanted to get different nebulas with the same shape. And this value does nothing because this is just an XYZ offset. Okay, so reset that back. Click here so that the stream updates. Animation. This animates this in a certain direction. So this is X. So if I wanted to animate at 0.1 at 0.1 speed in the X direction, I could add a 0.1 here, and then move my mouse around so that you can kind of see what's going on, because it doesn't capture unless I do that for some reason. But you can kind of see the animation process, and you can do this on any of the axes. And then this warps it with the same animation but ran through a sine, which means that instead of doing this constant going in one direction or the other, it would go over to one direction, then stop, and then come back over to the other direction, and stop, and then come back over to the other, and etc. It's a sine wave, basically. So I'll go ahead and kill the animation here. These are color multipliers. These multiply. These color multipliers multiply their corresponding color. I wonder if I could just... do it like this and probably capture better like that. Okay, so what does that do then? So say we wanted the bottom end of this to just glow. Then I could conceivably multiply that bottom end color by 1,000, and now it's glowing. Or let's say I wanted the middle layer to actually subtract from the effect. I could change this to a -1 and come over here, And now your middle layer is subtracting from the other two layers, which just seems to have the effect of erasing the color variance in this case, but you could do other cool things here. So I'll do 1, and let's actually do a subtraction of the top level color, which is that blue, and take a look at that. Alright, so now we've subtracted our blue from our other stuff, and we end up with a different effect. Okay, that's what this line does. Noise clamp min, noise clamp max, color gradient center, and color mask exponent. Okay, so what do these do? This is the, you generally won't mess with the noise clamp minimum. I mean, like you would, I can't think of a situation where you would mess with that. Noise clamp maximum can basically control how much above 1 we're going to allow it to go. So at 1, it looks like this. At 2, you get a little bit more glowing, or like say I wanted to go below 1 and just 0.5. I clamped off the blue, basically. And go back to 1. Color gradient center and color mask exponent. Okay, color mask exponent controls the fall off between the colors that you set. Go back to 1. And color gradient center controls the center of the gradient that's being used here. So if I did 0.1, we should be all blue, or almost all blue, because we've pushed the color gradient towards that direction. And if I were to do 0.9, we've pushed it towards the orange. So we'll go back to 0.5, which is the default. All right, remap. This allows us to remap the value range. So basically think of all the value range, and you're setting an arbitrary minimum at 0 and an arbitrary maximum at 0.4, and then you're scaling everything within that range and outside of that range. So we're scaling everything as if I'd scaled 0 to 0.4 to 0 to 0.8. In that case, it would be like a double, basically. We're doubling it, but it's not just doubling it. We can turning it up or turning this down increases your high end color display. Turning it up decreases your high end color display. Turning this down or turning this up decreases the amount of bottom color that you see at all. So like it clipped out some. And the higher you go with this, the more you clip out. Yeah, you can see we're clipping out. Awesome. Okay. So we'll go back to our default values here. And okay. And actually this should be probably 0.4 for this texture probably. 2. Yeah, that's too much. So that's what happens when you set this range to smaller than your actual range of values that you have. Let's see what 0.5 looks like. Okay, 0.5 looks pretty good. So we have min max 0.5 to 1. So we're remapping 0 to 0.5 to 0 to 1. Emissive exponent, emissive multiplier, opacity exponent, opacity multiplier. So these control emissivity. The fallout, basically, the exponent's going to basically control your fall off of emissivity. And your multiplier is going to control intensity. So like we have more fall off here than we had before. If we're to 0.75 this, for instance, we have less fall off. I set my intensity to 1. If I set my intensity to 0.1, then my emissivity goes down on the texture or on the material. So we're just going to go 1, 1. Opacity exponent is used for the same thing, fall off for the alpha mask. So if I go to 1, we have less alpha fall off, so you have more of the clouds in darker colors. And if I go to 2, or let's do 4, we have more fall off and more transparency. We'll go back to the default 2. And finally, opacity multiplier is just a flat multiplier on whatever opacity is getting fed in and increase the translucency of this nebula. Okay, what else? What else we got here? So obviously you have your colors. This is pretty self-explanatory. It's a 3-color gradient is what it's using to color this thing. So you can pick whatever colors you like, whatever colors look good, and kind of play around with them. Noise 1 minus lerp. So at our output of our noise node, we have a 1 minus and just the noise, and those are lerped together here. So if I were to make this a 0.5, it would be pretty muddy because you're lerping the 1 minus exactly evenly with itself. But if I was to just go to 1 or 0, just as an example, so let's take a look at our nebula right now. Right now it looks like this. Okay, so let's flip this to 1 and see what happens when we feed the 1 minus noise node. A different but still cool looking nebula. So this is a way you can get variance. I will show this. What happens if you do this? If I do a perfect 0.5, it's just a mess because you're you're lerping it with itself and just getting like even values. But if I were to do 0.2, you can blend some. You just want to avoid specifically values around the middle there. So we'll go back to 0 with this. And finally, this object scale. This is the master scale of everything based on the size of the object. So if I size my object to 5, which it is right now, go take a look at my nebula. It's a size 5. At baseline, what you should be doing is just feeding whatever size your object is into this. And then you should be using these values to tune your effect. You can use this to tune your effect, but it's probably better to get your effect locked in here so that then it'll be scalable. Because if you're using this to tune your effect, your scalability kind of goes out the window. Just to show what happens. So if I make this 1, it would be 5 times smaller scale and everything. All right? And if I were to go 10, it would be double the scale of what we looked at. Like this. And I think that's it. Hopefully the fucking capture worked this time. So I'm going to go check this video and ensure that everything worked properly this time, because this is the 3rd attempt to record this. And I will in the meantime. Let's do a little bit of animation. 0.1, 0.1, 0.2, and let's see if we can get some of the animation recorded here. And you can kind of see the effect of that 0.2 sine wave. It'll go a little ways, pause, flow back a little bit, go forward. Because I warped the sine wave is at like a 0.2. And I think that is going to be it.